In 2004, The Passion of the Christ shocked the world, a brutal, unflinching portrayal of Jesus' final hours that stirred controversy, devotion, and record-breaking box office numbers. More than 20 years have passed since its release, and while the film left an indelible mark on cinema and faith alike, what happened to the people who brought it to life? Some found new purpose, some faded quietly into the background, and others faced tragic losses and career-altering challenges. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the cast of The Passion of the Christ and where they are now. At number 11, Mel Gibson. He wasn't on screen, but his fingerprints were on every frame. In 2004, Gibson shocked the world with The Passion of the Christ, a film spoken almost entirely in ancient languages, depicting the brutal final hours of Jesus with unflinching detail. He didn't just direct it, he financed it himself, risked his career for it, and created one of the most controversial and successful religious films of all time. At the time of release, Mel Gibson was 48 years old. Best known for Braveheart, Lethal Weapon, and Mad Max, he had already achieved Hollywood royalty status. But The Passion was different, personal, uncompromising, and divisive. The film grossed over $600 million worldwide, sparked international debate, and earned 3 Academy Award nominations. But Gibson didn't just face critical praise. He faced backlash accusations of anti-Semitism, religious extremism, and exploitation. And in the years that followed, his personal life unraveled. Controversies, leaked recordings, legal battle. Gibson became a symbol not just of cinematic power, but of public scandal. For nearly a decade, he was exiled from Hollywood. In 2016, he directed Hacksaw Ridge, a brutal World War II film about faith and conscience. The film was a hit, earning 6 Oscar nominations, including Best Director. It marked the beginning of Gibson's second act. Now 69 years old, Mel Gibson is preparing for what may be his boldest move yet, The Passion of the Christ Resurrection, the long-awaited sequel. From Hollywood icon to religious outcast to comeback director, Mel Gibson's journey mirrors the themes of his greatest film, suffering, fall, and redemption. At number 10, David Morata. He didn't play a disciple, or a soldier, or a prophet. He played a baby, cradled in the arms of Satan, eyes wide, mouth curled into an unnatural smirk. But this wasn't just any baby, it was the demonic baby, one of the Passion of the Christ's most shocking and symbolic images. When the film premiered in 2004, Morata was 42 years old. A seasoned Italian actor with dwarfism, he had built a career playing fantasy and sci-fi roles across Europe. But this was different. Wrapped in black, eyes too knowing, smile too cruel. The moment is brief, but unforgettable. It added a surreal layer to the film's spiritual conflict, a psychological horror in the middle of divine agony. After The Passion, Morata continued acting in Italy. He appeared in comedies, dramas, and genre films, often taking roles that pushed visual boundaries or played with perception. His talent wasn't just in physical performance, it was in stillness, subtlety, and a willingness to embrace the unusual. Now 62 years old, Morata remains active in the industry, though his public profile is low. He's worked steadily in both television and theater, and is considered a versatile performer with a strong cult following in Italian cinema. In a film filled with pain, betrayal, and sacrifice, Davide Morata delivered something else entirely: pure, concentrated unease in one of the most haunting moments in religious film history. At number 9, Rosalinda Celentano. She played Satan not with horns or fire, but with a gaze so chilling, so otherworldly, it made your skin crawl. When The Passion of the Christ was released in 2004, Celentano was 37 years old. The daughter of Italian music legend Adriano Celentano, she came from a world of fame, but this role launched her into cinematic infamy. Her portrayal of Satan was strange, silent, and terrifying. Androgynous, hairless, pale, with eyes that seemed to look through time. She didn't speak often, she didn't have to. Her slow walk through Gethsemane, her presence at the scourging, and the haunting moment she carries a demonic baby while watching Christ suffer weren't just scenes. They were nightmares wrapped in symbolism. After The Passion, Celentano's career took an artistic, unconventional path. She continued acting, but often in smaller European films and television projects. She also embraced painting and sculpture, exploring her creative identity beyond the screen. She remained active in Italy's cultural scene, known as much for her visual art as for her enigmatic public persona. Always private, always enigmatic, never chasing the spotlight. Now 56 years old, Rosalinda Celentano lives largely outside mainstream media. As of now, there's no confirmation that she'll return as Satan in The Passion of the Christ Resurrection, but her absence could leave a void no one else can fill. Because Celentano's Satan didn't need fire or fury, she whispered, stared, and stayed with you long after the credits rolled. At number 8, Matthias Bragia. He portrayed Caiaphas, the Jewish high priest the the powerful religious leader who orchestrated the trial of Jesus and symbolized the collision of faith, fear, and authority. When The Passion of the Christ premiered in 2004, Sbraglia was 51 years old. A respected veteran of Italian stage and screen, he brought gravitas and intensity to a role that required far more than just shouting accusations. Sbragia's Caiaphas wasn't simply a villain. He was a leader trying to hold on to control in a time of chaos. A man blinded by righteousness, consumed by prophecy, and afraid of revolution. In his voice, there was command. In his eyes, conflict. And in his final verdict, the consequence. His performance gave the film one of its most dramatic power struggles. Religion versus revelation. Law versus truth. Authority versus the divine. Before The Passion, Sbraglia had already built a long career in European cinema and television. Afterward, he continued working steadily in both mainstream and independent films, and even made an appearance in Ocean's 12, 2004, as Commissioner Giordano. Known in Italy for his range from Shakespeare to political thrillers, Sbraglia remained a pillar of serious Italian drama, often taking on roles that required intellect, edge, and moral ambiguity. Now 72 years old, Mattia Sbraglia has maintained a more discreet public profile in recent years, focusing on local theater and select film projects. As of 2025, his involvement in The Passion of the Christ, Resurrection has not been confirmed, but given the sequel's spiritual and political stakes, Caiaphas could return not as a villain, but as a man haunted by what he helped unleash. At number 7, Hristo Shapov. He portrayed Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who condemned Jesus to death not out of hatred but out of fear. When The Passion of the Christ was released in 2004, Shapov was 40 years old. Born in Bulgaria and already a star in Eastern European cinema, he wasn't well known to Western audiences until he stepped into one of history's most infamous roles. His Pilate wasn't a cartoon villain. He was calculated, hesitant, a man trapped between political survival and moral uncertainty. Shapov's eyes did most of the talking, weary, conflicted, and burdened by a decision that would echo across time. His scenes with Jesus were filled with quiet tension. He wasn't wrestling with power, he was wrestling with truth and losing. Critics praised Shapov's restraint. In a film marked by emotional extremes, his performance gave us something different. A man torn by duty, manipulated by fear, and paralyzed by indecision. After The Passion, Shapov's career expanded beyond Bulgaria. He appeared in international productions like Spartacus, 2004, and Carol, the Man Who Became Pope, 2005. While continuing to act in Eastern European cinema, he remained a respected veteran in his homeland, known for both historical epics and modern dramas. In 2022, he starred in the Heart of the Machine, a critically acclaimed Bulgarian film that earned praise for its intensity and moral complexity. Now 61 years old, Hristo Shapov is still active in film and television, though he keeps a relatively low profile outside the spotlight. At number 6, Luca Lionello. He played Judas Iscariot, the disciple who betrayed Jesus with a kiss. A man forever linked to treachery, but portrayed here as something far more complex. In 2004, when The Passion of the Christ hit theaters, Luca Lionello was 37 years old. He wasn't a global star, but his performance left a lasting impact. Judas has always been seen as a villain, but Lionello didn't play him as evil, he played him as broken. A man torn between loyalty and despair, a soul unraveling under the weight of guilt. From the moment he accepts the silver to the harrowing sequence of his suicide, Lionello's Judas is haunted by his own conscience and tormented by demonic hallucinations. His tortured scream in the wilderness, his blood-soaked descent into madness, these weren't just scenes, they were a study in internal collapse. Lionello's portrayal gave Judas dimension and gave viewers a new way to understand one of the Bible's most infamous figures. A traitor, yes, but also a man, battered by his own choices. After The Passion, Lionello continued acting across European cinema, carving out a reputation as a versatile character actor. He took on roles that often dealt with moral ambiguity, emotional conflict, and spiritual themes, clearly drawn to the same raw material that defined his Judas. Now, 61 years old, Lionello remains active in the artistic world, not just on screen, but also on stage, where he's praised for his intensity and fearless approach to difficult roles. Luca Lionello gave Judas a face full of anguish, a voice full of remorse, and a performance that made even betrayal feel painfully human. At number 5, Hristo Jivkov. He played John, the beloved disciple, the only male follower who remained with Jesus until the very end. When The Passion of the Christ premiered in 2004, Jivkov was just 29 years old. A Bulgarian actor known mostly in European circles, his casting might have seemed quiet at first, but his performance was anything but. Jivkov brought a calm, unwavering loyalty to the role, a steady emotional presence amid chaos. With soft eyes and solemn dignity, dignity, he made John more than just a follower. He made him a witness, a brother, a son to Mary, a silent strength as the world fell apart around him. His performance was subtle but deeply affecting. He didn't need long monologues, just a look, a tear, a steady hand on Mary's shoulder, and the audience understood everything. After The Passion, Jivkov continued acting in international films and television. He took roles in historical dramas and spiritual stories, often portraying characters who carried a quiet wisdom. He also moved behind the camera, producing films and collaborating on independent projects across Europe. But while his talent was flourishing, his health was quietly deteriorating. In March 2023, Christo Jivkov passed away at the age of 48 after a long and private battle with lung cancer. The news came as a shock to fans and colleagues who remembered him as gentle, professional, and deeply dedicated to his craft. And though his life was cut short, his performance lives on in silence, in sorrow, and in faith. At number 4, Francesco De Vito. He played Peter, the disciple closest to Jesus, a man of great faith and heartbreaking fear. When The Passion of the Christ was released in 2004, Francesco De Vito was 37 years old, virtually unknown to international audiences at the time. His quiet intensity and rugged sincerity made his performance as Peter one of the film's emotional anchors. In one of the most unforgettable scenes, Peter denies Jesus 3 times, each denial cracking the foundation of his soul. His anguished reaction after the rooster crows wasn't theatrical, it was human, raw, devastating. DeVito didn't have the fame of his co-stars, but his portrayal made audiences feel the guilt, love, and spiritual confusion of a man who faltered in the darkest hour, a moment that resonated with viewers from all walks of life. After The Passion, Francesco DeVito didn't become a household name. Instead, he continued to build a steady career in Italian theater and smaller film productions, often taking roles that leaned into introspection and character depth. He stayed largely out of Hollywood, choosing instead to focus on local projects that allowed him to grow as an actor without the glare of global celebrity. But within religious film circles, his name remained respected. His version of Peter, definitive. Now, 54 years old, DeVito is still an active figure in Italian stage and screen. And in 2023, it was confirmed he will reprise his role in The Passion of the Christ Resurrection. That journey from fear to faith, from failure to leadership, could become one of the most powerful storylines of the entire follow-up. Francesco DeVito didn't just play Peter, he carried his shame, his loyalty, and ultimately, his redemption. At number 3, Monica Bellucci. She played Mary Magdalene, one of the most complex and human characters in The Passion of the Christ, a woman burdened by her past, redeemed by faith, and standing by Christ through his final hours. When the film premiered in 2004, Monica Bellucci was 40 years old. By then, she was already an international star, renowned for her beauty, talent, and commanding screen presence. From Milena to The Matrix Reloaded, Bellucci was no stranger to iconic roles. But The Passion of the Christ marked a dramatic shift, trading glamour for grief and sensuality for spiritual gravitas. Her portrayal of Mary Magdalene was quiet but profound eyes full of sorrow, yet unwavering in faith. The scene where she wipes the blood from the floor with her hair after the scourging remains one of the film's most hauntingly beautiful moments. Critics praised her restraint, audiences remembered her strength, and suddenly the world saw Bellucci in a new light, not just as a star, but as a serious dramatic actress. After The Passion, Bellucci continued a successful global career. She appeared in The Brothers Grimm, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and became the oldest Bond girl in history when she starred in Spectre 2015 alongside Daniel Craig. She also continued working in European cinema, often choosing roles that explored emotional and moral depth, a clear echo of her work in The Passion. Now 60 years old, Monica Bellucci remains one of the most respected actresses in international cinema, known for aging with grace and still commanding the screen with quiet power. At number 2, Maya Morgenstern. She portrayed Mary, the mother of Jesus, a performance so raw, so deeply maternal, it anchored the entire film in heartbreak and grace. When The Passion of the Christ premiered in 2004, Maya Morgenstern was 41 years old. Already an accomplished Romanian actress, she was best known in Europe for her work in dramatic theater and film, but this role introduced her to a global audience and left many stunned by the depth of her emotional presence. Morgenstern didn't play Mary as a saint in stained glass. She played her as a mother, a woman silently watching her son suffer and die in the most brutal way imaginable. Her restrained agony, especially in the scenes of Jesus' scourging and crucifixion, gave the film its most human moments. Born in Bucharest and of Jewish heritage, Morgenstern's casting carried symbolic weight, and her portrayal bridged centuries of religious tension with a quiet, universal sorrow. Director Mel Gibson later called called her performance one of the most powerful things he'd ever seen on screen. After The Passion, Morgenstern didn't retreat from the spotlight. Unlike some cast members whose careers slowed, hers flourished. She continued to work in theater, television, and film across Romania and Europe, receiving multiple awards for her contributions to the arts. Beyond acting, she became the director of the State Jewish Theater in Bucharest, using her platform to promote cultural heritage, historical memory, and dramatic education. Now 62 years old, she remains a pillar of Romanian culture, deeply respected for both her artistic achievements and her advocacy for Holocaust remembrance. For millions of viewers, Morgenstern's Mary wasn't just a character. She was a mirror of every mother's deepest fear and most enduring love. At number 1, Jim Caviezel. He played Jesus of Nazareth, the central figure of the Passion of the Christ, and the role that would define, elevate, and complicate his entire career. When the film was released in 2004, Caviezel was 35 years old. By then, he had already delivered standout performances in The Thin Red Line, 1998, and Frequency, 2000, but nothing could prepare him or audiences for what came next. Caviezel poured body and soul into his portrayal of Christ, and the production took a real toll. During filming, he was accidentally whipped, dislocated his shoulder carrying the cross, and was even struck by lightning during the Sermon on the Mount scene. One of 3 crew members hit that day. His physical suffering became part of the film's brutal authenticity, and his unwavering dedication left a mark few performances ever do. But when the film exploded at the box office, Caviezel didn't get the career boost many expected. Instead, Hollywood seemed to turn its back. Caviezel later admitted that he was rejected by my own industry after taking the role, with some filmmakers labeling the project as too controversial and too religious. For years, he struggled to find mainstream roles, quietly sidelined by the very system he once stood on the brink of conquering. But Caviezel didn't stop. He found new life on television as the lead in the hit CBS series Person of Interest, which ran from 2011 to 2016. He also returned to faith-based projects, starring in Paul, Apostle of Christ, 2018, and Sound of Freedom, 2023, the latter becoming a surprise global phenomenon and box office smack. Now 56 years old, Jim Caviezel remains a vocal defender of his faith, often speaking out on moral and spiritual issues. His off-screen life has been just as committed. He adopted 3 children from China with special needs and has been married to his wife Carrie since 1996. From agony to acclaim, rejection to resurrection, Jim Caviezel's journey mirrors the very story he helped tell, one of suffering, purpose, and unshakable faith. Which cast member's journey surprised you the most? What scene from The Passion of the Christ still stays with you today? Drop your thoughts in the comment. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with others who were impacted by this unforgettable film. Thank you for watching, and may your path be filled with peace, strength, and unshakable faith.